She really started steering me towards, she started getting onto the topic, the rehab, blah, blah, blah. Okay, have you thought about maybe, putting the alcohol and the drugs down? No. I actually think I've got this figured out. It's not my fault. It's the girlfriend's fault. And what did I do? I tried to manipulate her because she said, I wanted to go travel. I was like, go traveling with your friends. I'll pay for it. Get her out of the house for a month or two. I really tried to push her towards that. And then when she was like, no, that's not what I want to do, I've ripped her fucking heart out.
I'm Paul Scolford, and this is Powerful. In this series, I come clean about my own sobriety and the journey it took for me to get here. In each episode, I will speak to a special guest about their addictions and how they achieve sobriety and how they maintain a happy lifestyle today. Really excited to talk to Henry Lunn today. Henry is a brilliant polo player and the owner of Bell Polo Team, which is based in Argentina. Formerly a very successful trader, Henry now owns his own investment firm. Henry is a shining example that you don't have to lose everything. At the age of 25, coming into recovery, putting his mental well-being and sobriety first is really admirable. So in some of these episodes, there will be discussions of alcohol misuse, drugs, sexual abuse, suicide, and some other heavy topics. So please take care when listening. Henry, thank you so much for joining me on This Is Powerful. I'm looking forward to this conversation. You look quite scared.
Yeah. Deer in headlights.
They're just beautiful lighting for us.
Yeah.
So we look pretty on YouTube. I know you're young, mate. I just want to ask, how long have you been sober?
I have been sober for just a little over 5 years.
So you're 30 now, right?
30 now.
That's young to get sober. That's a really good age. Before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing, where you're from, what your upbringing was like?
So I'm from Essex, originally a place called Harlow. And in a lot of ways, my upbringing was amazing. And in some ways, it was quite challenging. I don't want this to be a kind of smear campaign because from the bottom of my heart, I know my parents were doing the best that they could. But I think through generational things that have been passed down to them, there were challenges. I grew up with 2 older brothers. We were very big guys, pretty feisty people. And yeah, it could be pretty chaotic at home. There was alcohol, occasionally drugs in the house. And
was that from your parents, you mean, or when you boys got older?
Yeah, from when us boys got older and, from when us boys got older, really. And, I was exposed to a lot of things at a young age. It could be pretty hostile at home. Quite hostile, quite frequently, actually. Like I say, I'm very close with my parents today, and I don't want it to be a smear campaign, but, it could be a pretty toxic environment.
How was school?
If I'm honest, I
This is all about being honest.
Yes, I am. Yeah, this is about me being honest. I struggled at school. I went to a small private school, and I was kept there because both my brothers got expelled from a kind of, a state school. And throughout, periods of financial difficulty, my parents, kept me there to try and veer me down a different path. But if I'm honest, what I remember the most, and it's just I remember calculated confusion. I didn't know, and it took me, it took me until I was a year into sobriety. I thought you had to act a certain way to gain friends, to create relationships, find out what other people want, and behave like that.
What was that learned from the school?
Yeah, I think I remember I was a pathological liar when I was a kid. I had to think to fit in. I don't think my relationships, even from a very young age, were what they are now with myself and with other people. And I just remember it being really exhausting. And
why did you feel like it didn't fit in though?
I don't know. It was always, I was looking at what other people had, and I had to think about my behaviour. I don't really know where that kind of separation stemmed from. I know it was there now because I've, something that carried on in my adult life, and I kind of saw where it kind of began. But where it truly stemmed from, I don't really know, to be honest. But it kind of got worse as I got older, really. But certainly the late kind of 14, 15, 16 was a really challenging time at school for me.
Because you felt like you didn't fit in?
Yes. I didn't mean to talk. Yes, I felt like I didn't fit in, but on top of that, a member of my family was getting in quite a bit of trouble. I was starting to behave really badly. I started, seeking out weed, alcohol, that kind of stuff. And I became a bit of like the black sheep of the school.
And what age was that, 14?
Yeah, I'd say 14, 15.
So was that when you first tried alcohol or a drug?
Certainly drugs, yeah. Like, I think I was 15 when I tried cocaine for the first time, but I was nicking drinks out of the cupboard from a younger age than that. And I was, frequently smoking weed.
Were you doing that because it was a cool thing to do, or were you doing that because actually when you consumed alcohol, something changed?
To be honest, it kind of ended at alcohol, but it started with drugs for me. I could get my hand on like weed from a young age, and I think I was more or less smoking weed daily from the age of 15. I don't know how I didn't get caught, to be honest, by my parents. I did actually occasionally,
yeah.
But they were totally unaware of how frequent it was. And that for me was definitely, I had a yearning at that point. When I got home, I was uncomfortable, and it was like my mission was to try and smoke something that night.
And how did that affect you? As in, because we talk about this a lot in addiction, that some of us feel that we're born different, that you've got less layers of skin, you feel more vulnerable, you're thinking you don't fit in. So by thinking that you don't fit in, you're not in the same vibe as everyone else. So when you find a substance and you take that, all of a sudden that anxiety, the thought process, things change. And it's like you kind of either fit in or you find your own crew. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I think I couldn't suffer myself. Like I needed constant distraction. When I didn't have that, I needed something to, I needed another kind of distraction, whether it was, something going on the outside, or I needed something that was going to kind of distract me internally, which I was, using, substances to suppress what I was feeling. I found myself in a naughty crew when I was like 15. I was bowling around Harlow in a white Timberland tracksuit, smoking joints, trying to get in fights. I mean, that's just baffling, really, to think what I was doing.
But a lot of youths do that.
Yeah.
They do that.
Yeah, and I think it's the sad truth of today that I think kids or young people need more to do. People think kids on motorbikes and all that kind of stuff is a pain in the arse, but actually, I think as a young bloke, you need to let off some steam and,
I totally agree. I think when I was a child, I bought my first motorbike when I was 13. I did a milk round, saved up, looked in the back of the paper, and there was this little motorbike. It was just a Honda C90, like it was a rubbish bike, but I bought it for 40 quid and I sprayed it camouflage, and I used to hide it down. We lived next to a field, like the last house in London before it breaks out into Essex, and I used to keep it next to the house so no one could see it was doing camouflage, and I'd just come home from school, jump on this, and I'd just fly around on this bike. And it was literally, that saved me, because that was my escape. I felt strong on a bike. When you're on a motorbike, you can only think of being on a motorbike. You can't think of other stuff. It takes your mind off everything. And for me, that was the first thing. I loved that and sports, but I love the motorbikes. And it is now, I think when you look at kids, when I was younger, everyone played out anyway. Now you're too scared to play out because of narrative on the news. Then you've got screens involved. Then you've got less communication because the parents are busy doing what they're doing. So you're just left with all this energy. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, I know exactly what you're going to do. Yeah. bowl around Harlow in a Timberland tracksuit, drinking and smoking weed, starting fights. That's
I do have a good
obvious
image.
solution. Obvious solution.
So you left school early, right?
Yeah, so I left school, I think, with one GCSE. I was very fortunate, you know, like I said, my parents kept me at a small private school, and did it keep me out of trouble? No, but it gave me the opportunity for get me a foot in the door with a career. There was a friend of mine, his dad, incredibly successful guy, became a real role model of mine. You know, he came from a poor background, and he ended up as a president of one of the biggest broking firms in the world. Probably the most hardworking human being I've ever met, and the kind of least judgmental. You know, he knew about things that were going on in my family, and they took me on holiday a couple of times, and I think, I don't know what it was. Maybe he saw a bit of, you know, like similar character. I don't know, but I knew if I could. He's always said to me, "Go and do your A levels, so you've got something to fall back on." Well, shortly after my 16th birthday, my mum moved out. You know, I was in the thick of the drugs and the alcohol. A very close family member was in prison. Black sheep of the school. I messed up all my GCSEs. I just didn't even really turn up. And maybe subconsciously, I knew that I could have that opportunity to fall back on. But yes, left school, I think around the 2nd or 3rd of July, 2010. And I think the 10th of July, 2010, I started making tea and coffee at a broking firm in London.
Through him?
Through him.
Right. So he gave you that opportunity, even though that you didn't do what he suggested.
Yes. Yeah. I think I was like, right, how can I speed this up? Fuck everything up.
But you must have had, going to private school, I assume, because I didn't, that you got a good education, even in the midst of all the chaos you was doing.
It's very, because of, I believe, how I was looked at in that school. I don't know how I didn't get expelled. I almost did a few times. I was very creative and wriggly.
Funny that.
Yeah. and
persuasive.
Yeah, persuasive. I mean, I didn't read a book till I was in recovery. I did not read a book until I was.
Well, are you dyslexic, or you just couldn't sit still?
I couldn't sit still. I just could not work out. And even now, I was with someone on Sunday, and I was like, they were telling me, sometimes they get really stuck into a book and they'll just read the whole thing within 48 hours. And I was just sitting there, I could feel myself shrinking in the chair, going, wow. You know, I was just in complete awe.
Goals.
Yeah, gold. I'm like 2 pages a night, sweating, you know, and that's after 5 years of practice.
So when you went to the city at 16,
yeah,
that's a lot of pressure, is it not? I know you're making teas and coffees, but you're in a corporate environment. You need to climb a ladder. How was that? And how did you progress from making tea and coffee?
Honestly, the level of anxiety that I experienced every day that I walked through that door was just I don't know how I did it. I think maybe ignorance, excitement. The desk I ended up working on was probably, I'd say, one of the most ferocious desks in London, not just in the company. It was big personalities, big earning desk. And how was it? I just...
What were you working in? What field?
I was a Euro swaps broker.
Right.
It was a busy market. It was one of the busiest desks in the company. And there was, like I say, big personalities there. And the thing was, you know, there's that environment in the city where alcohol is really accepted, drugs was frowned upon, but, you know, it goes on. This desk, they were a seriously busy desk. It wasn't one where it wasn't the client entertainment desk where they're out for lunch every day. You were at that desk from 6:30 in the morning, 7 a.m. in the morning till 5 p.m. You ran to the toilet to go for a piss, and you sent people like me to go and get your breakfast, lunch, tea and coffee. I mean, did I know what I was doing initially? I had no idea.
How did you earn your badges, though, to go from making tea and coffee to stay on the desk?
To be honest, I kind of developed this desperate drive. I was like, this is my only chance. I don't want to be, you know, I saw my dad really fight hard and struggle to retain the life that we had, and I did not want that.
Right.
And I was like, this is my only shot. So I had this real desperate drive to succeed. But, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. It was like a real fine tipping balance between my priorities to succeed and to seek out the drugs and alcohol. And I think because I was so young, I could tolerate getting smashed, you know, quickly sniffed out the sniffers, you know, and literally. And, you know, it was a fine balance between wanting to succeed and getting my fix. And, you know, but where I was so young and my body could tolerate it, I could get pissed every night. I could turn up with no sleep. I could do 2-3 days, no sleep. And, you know, I was hungry. I made sure I was first in, made sure I was last out. And because I was out getting pissed every night, I got to know all the clients. You know, there was no excuse for me not to go out and every reason for me to go out. You know, it didn't, I mean, the mad...
So did you think you was doing well, or was you just on a mission?
Oh, mate, my ego was inflated very early. But I just think, I'll tell you about this, which was absolutely bonkers. So I tried ecstasy for the first time about a month before starting. And I was in like some kind of rave, got the guy's number. Anyway, month in, got my first paycheck. So I thought, what do I do? Well, I'm going to go and buy a load of ecstasy off this guy, totally inexperienced. Called him up, got a bag of 30 E's, went to my mum's flat. She wasn't there. And I said to my friends, I said, come round. I had 3 mates coming round or 4 mates coming round. And each time one of them turned up, I just took another pill with them. So within the space of 45 minutes, I'd taken 4 E's, bearing in mind a month before, I was boss-eyed after 1 because I had no idea. And I came to, you know, 48 hours later, trashed my mum's flat, stabbed the bed, radiators off the wall, chewed the inside of my mouth. Thought, wow, I was in the right pickle, but I'm all right. Went to work the next day. This is a month in, doing the teas and coffees, fucking had a panic attack and collapsed.
That's a good start.
It's a good start, yeah. I was off to a flying start. And ambulance turned up and I somehow managed to wangle it. Obviously, the big boss's foot in the door, close family friend was in, like I say, in trouble at that time. Blamed it all on that. 5 days off work. And I was like, right, okay, don't do that again. If you're going to take E's, do them on the weekend. Don't double drop. You know, so it wasn't like don't do them. It was like, be a bit more careful about how doing them. But it was, you know, so that's where my using was from walking through the door. So I don't actually know. I must have been so desperate to not end up in the state that my dad was in. And not criticize, like, I didn't want him to be in the struggle my dad was in
I
at
understand.
times.
I always watched, I didn't see my dad a lot when I was younger. Not for bad reasons, but he was working. If he wasn't working on his shift work, then he'd be going doing building work and other stuff. He was just working and working because he wanted us to have a nice house. He wanted us to have a good home because his father unfortunately gambled his life away.
Yeah.
As well as many other things. So he had that drive to do that. But that unfortunately had adverse effects from us because we didn't get to see him. So when I became a model and I started to model, I was exactly the same as you. I was like, this is my chance and I am taking it.
Yeah.
And I lived in 8 countries. For 8 years. I never stayed in one country more than 2 months. I was literally banging on doors like, what we're doing this week, let's go somewhere else. And that drive kept the addiction away just enough for that period until I got very successful and I started to take my foot off the gas and be like, well, I don't have to work this week. I don't have to work that week. You know, so when did it start to progress for you?
Do you know what? I totally relate to that. There was just enough of a carrot dangled to keep your head above water.
Yeah.
Literally exactly the same thing for me. You know what? Looking back, you know, there was a period, you know, around my 18th birthday, around my 19th birthday, where I lost, when my best friend sadly passed away in a freak accident, and that was it was very difficult. But now I look back and think of how numb I was. Like I really just used that as an excuse to. I was using it as an excuse. And I think about I think about how much I didn't feel then, and this kid, his name was Henry as well, the most beautiful human from the most beautiful family, who, when my parents split up, I spent a lot of time living with them. I was, staying with them a lot. For someone that close to you to be taken away and for you to feel numb, I must have had a strong hold on me at that point. It was such a blur. That whole thing was such a blur. But, by that time I was drinking, I was taking drugs, 3-4 nights a week. It was always a balancing act. It was like, okay, ketamine got introduced. Perfect. I'll take ketamine because that wears off within half an hour. So I can sit up till 2 a.m. at home doing that, go to work. Okay, cool. Drinks, alcohol, this, that balancing act, that whole juggle started then. And I would say within 24 months of, my friend passing, and also my mum got really ill 6 months afterwards. I'd say within 24 months, that's when my mental health really started to decline.
In what way?
I always had this kind of panicky disposition. I don't know whether it was caused by the early use of, weed and, alcohol, but I started to really get a panic response, panic attacks. Things weren't going as I wanted them to go at work. And at that point, it was obviously all them. I wasn't considering the fact that I was, turning up smashed some days, and they knew what was going on. I was very good at the job and I worked very hard, but, they're not, it's not their first rodeo.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it's funny as well when you're drinking and using as a young person because you think no one notices, you're getting away with it. It's all cool. And it's literally everyone's just looking at you going, you're such a mess, but we're not going to tell you.
Yeah. Mad. And it's just, and I think they were trying to protect me in a really bad way, but, they're whatever, Yeah. Yeah, so I'd say I remember, what was this? Yeah, I've been there 5 years at that point. So I was 16, 21. And I'd actually started earning really good money. Never had money in my bank account at the end of the month, but I was, for 18, 19-year-old to earn 100 grand, whatever, even that's, 11 years ago, it's quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
Never had money in my bank at the end of the month. And it was chaotic in my own mind. And I remember, driving to work every day, punching the steering wheel, screaming, anxiety, this isn't happening. And I think of the situation, I crashed 2 cars while I was there, completely out of my head. Turning up, no sleep frequently, the anxiety, sleeping on the bathroom floor. The most harrowing moment, and I do want to say this, and this was at a young age, and this is how delusional I was from an early age. I can't have been older than 17, and I'd been out in Canary Wharf, sniffed the rest of the money I had, and I was in a suit, I'd been in a bar, didn't have the money to get a taxi home. It's probably 2 a.m, everything's shut. I remember sitting under, I think it was the Limehouse DLR station in my suit, 16, 17, probably had a bit of gear on me. I was sat in there sniffing it. And I remember walking into work, and I was like, this is thinking I've made it. And that was at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I look back now and I just think, oh my God, I don't know how I'm alive. It's very difficult for me not to believe in some kind of guardian angel or fucking spiritual things, because there was so many points from day one where it could have gone wrong.
Did you have any awareness that maybe, because all drugs and all drink are painkillers, emotional, mental, or physical painkillers, that's what they are.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea that that's probably what you were doing? Because when I first went out, the rave scene came about, it was amazing. I share this, that finally was out of like the skinhead football hooligan from the 70s, and in the 80s things started getting colourful and great music was good. We started going out, and in the late 80s when the rave scene came along, it was such a relief. It was such a unification. It was like when police used to come to raid the places wherever they were, they'd be like, oh, come in, have a look. And I think even the police were happy because there was never any violence. Everyone was hugging. And that for me was a period where I felt I just could not wait for weekends. I've always been a hard worker. I'd work my ass off all the time, always have done. I got that discipline from my dad. But boy, when I could go out on the weekends or whatever and just be free,
Yeah.
that was, inadvertently, I was taking away all the anxiety I had, all the pain I had, all the memories. My grandfather, who I idolised, he was such a father figure for me. When he died when I was 19, I went AWOL. I just completely switched off. I remember seeing him. We were really close, and I remember seeing him in the coffin, and my, I don't say I laughed, my body laughed because I couldn't take in the information that this man's laying there, and I recognised him, but I didn't recognise him because his energy wasn't there. He wasn't there, and it was like weird to see a body. It wasn't the first one I've seen, but it was weird to see this body, and I'm like, where's he gone? Like, where has he gone? And I felt
Yeah, I
like,
can feel that.
I felt like my airbag, my rock, my go-to wasn't there. I was like, fuck. And I just, honestly, I was like, a part of me was like, don't need to care anymore.
Yeah.
Don't care. I don't care. Fuck, I don't care. And I really went, from that age till when I started modelling was a mess. That was a mess for me. That was a real, I remember those feelings of, because I wanted to please him and I wanted to be like him. It's very dignified. He was a war hero. He was just a lovely, gentle person, never spoke about anything. And that was like just pulling the pin out of a grenade for me. I was like, fuck it. I've not felt pain like this, so let's just bring it all
Let's
up.
roll.
Yeah, literally, that's what happened for me. But so that job couldn't have lasted a lot longer than 5 years.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. I mean,
What?
I mean, even I just, thinking about pain relief, I was taking pain, during the day, I would go and I'd take ibuprofen and codeine during the day because there was more codeine in the ibuprofen. I think I used to take handfuls of them to get through the day. And I think it was that last, say when the real onset of the panic attack started, the real hard done by kicked in, the ego, I know, I should be running this desk, and it kind of ended up, anyway, anyway, I don't want to divulge too much into how it ended, but, I was dismissed or I left.
Yeah.
And I left with some money in my pocket. And at that point, I remember I must have just felt so trapped. And this is something I think I've been thinking about quite a bit recently, whether there was like a trauma around there, because I was like, this is my only shot at survival in life. Quickly realized unless I'm mega rich, I'm going to be fucking poor because of how I was spending money, and I was trapped while this is my only shot in life. But in the end, I was like, I literally was just folding inside. Like there was one day I got shouted at by a client and I was just like, I cannot do this. I was like, I can't do this. And I went to the doctor the next day. I went with my mum and I was just like, I'm having panic attacks. I don't know. I didn't tell him that I was drinking and taking loads of drugs, but I was just like, I can't sleep at night. Best friend's died. Mum's had cancer. Moved out home. I'm fucking in debt. And I was 21. I was 22 at that point. I was like, I can't go back to this job. I was like, I'm done with finance. I'm done with these people. And a big factor as well, there was some guys that were, late 50s, 60s that were still going out drinking every night, no relationship with their family, all of that stuff. And like I was saying, my drive for success was to give me a situation where I don't have to be in the same situation as my dad, which was stressed and not present. So really, even if I got the money, I wasn't going to get the happy family.
You seeing those examples, of it's not going to work anyway.
Yeah. And then I got handed a box of antidepressants and a letter from the doctor. And, I started a to and fro with the company and they said, right, okay, let's just draw a line here.
So when you left,
yeah,
did you put anything down to the drink and drugs? What happened between there? And I know you set up your own business after that.
Yeah.
What happened in that period?
I actually, do you know what, my mum worked in social care and so did my brother, and it was a really beautiful company. And I was just like, done with finance. I was like, Mum, I want to come and work there. I was working for cash in hand at the time so it wasn't in breach of my contract. And it was actually a really fulfilling moment, actually. It gave me kind of a bit of exposure to what could happen when you do good things, actually. And there was some kids from really challenged backgrounds, and the company that my mum was running and set up, it was obviously as a business, they need to put food on the table, but, there were good people working there who cared about these people. And I kind of got involved in that, started training to be a support worker. I was doing manual labour, cleaning gardens, putting up fences, putting toilet seats on, painting walls. And maybe it was a real grounding, humbling kind of process. And I started to feel good. It felt good.
That's really key. I'm just going to jump in because a lot of us talk about this, about the shiny things. It's the same with me when I was modelling. It was all about what can I get, because that would be my security. If I'm financially sorted, I've got the girl, got the car, got the house, then that's all I need. And I got to that point and felt completely shot to bits and hollow. And when I come out of that for a little period of time, I was just doing things, helping family members like mastic a bathroom or go and put a fence up and do other stuff. And I never felt so free in my life. And I felt like, oh, I don't have to worry. Just kind of present in the moment. I think it's really important to tell people that you should have aspirations, you should have drive.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you find them moments, you can find yourself. Don't have to do it forever, but you can find yourself because you're changing yourself, aren't you?
Yeah. I completely agree. I think, it shone a light on how I could feel at that moment in time, but I still had that big hole with the generic programming of money, house, car, watch, clothes, ego.
So from doing the gardening and stuff, when that drive was still there, what did you do after that?
I actually, it was a really, really close friend of mine, super successful guy from a young age. I basically just called him up one day and said, like, look, I'm not going to pretend to be your best mate. I said, can I come and have a look at what you're doing? And he was very big independent trader, very talented guy. And I think because I didn't pretend to be his messmate, because I'd had the same, knocks on the door when I was broken, I was like, I know how it is, but, can I come and have a look? And he actually, one of the only people he ever said, yeah, sure. And I remember going in there, I sat in the office for a while, chatted to some guys, saw what they were doing, and I was like, I've got this. And, maybe that was the ego telling me I've got it. I don't know.
Well, I think you're either good or something or you're not. I think you can tell, can't you, if you're in tune with, like, I understand how this works and I'm going to work it.
Yeah.
Or blagging's a bit different.
Yeah. Well, I think I had to put my own money up. I looked at it and was like, I can do this. And I fully believed that I could do it. And I, a month later or 2 or 6 weeks later, started, the onboarding process. And it was a...
So what are you trading now? So what was it different from what you was doing in London?
Yeah. So in the broking world, a broker matches the buyer and seller. It talks to traders. And this was trading, which in the sense that I do the buying and selling.
Right.
So rather than taking a fee for matching A and B, I am A or B.
Got you.
But I dealt, it was all on computers, and, it was a real exciting time. And I was my own boss at that point. I didn't feel trapped. I was trapped by the money, but not by all these personalities. And it was it was an interesting place. It was a small prop trading firm. A couple of the guys there were successful. I mean, that's a whole nother story by itself.
Clearly not in sobriety at this point.
No.
So you're 24?
What was I? No. I was 22 when I started there.
Yeah.
I was 22 when I started there. I was not in sobriety. I was definitely not in sobriety. I had about 13 months of push and pull with that job, blew up my account, put money back in. I had some success in a real short term. Then the addictive nature would kick in, big gamble, smash my account, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And
the real turning point for me in that career was the following year, I'd met a really wonderful girl, like really, really wonderful human being. And we started dating, and she was only a tiny little thing, right? And I remember the first date we went out on, she had one less pint than me. And I was a big lad at that point, and I had lots of years of practice. I was thinking, fucking hell, she's amazing. Looks like that as an amazing thing.
I found my drinking partner.
Yeah, found her. And it was like, oh, do you want to go get some food? And she was like, no. I was like, do you want to go to another pub? Yeah. I was like, wow, we're off. And I had a few months of like hanging out with her. And, like my panic, my insecurity was so heavy that I had to drink before going out. And I'd actually really started depending on like barbiturates, like diazepam.
Yeah.
And I took a really rapid decline after mixing them with alcohol. And actually, the mad thing is, so I met her on like a family holiday. 3 days before that family holiday, I was in ICU after overdosing on cocaine. And, I remember coming to in the hospital and they were saying to me, I think we're going to have to put a stent in your heart. And I was like, okay, didn't really think about that. Anyway, in and out of consciousness, jabbed up with morphine. Next day, I'm in the hospital bed. They hadn't put a stent in the heart. Things are stabilised.
Like, totally perfect again.
Yeah, I was like, mint. And then, do you know what I did? All I was thinking was, right, I've got to chat with this nurse so I can keep getting some more of this morphine. That's all I was thinking about. I was thinking, oh, this fucking feels lovely. Wasn't thinking, vomiting after feeling like an elephant was standing on my chest, arteries in my heart spasming.
That's the sad thing about addiction, though. You can be that ill, that close, but mentally you're still subconsciously trying to get that fix, get that relief, and get stuff. It's mind blowing, isn't it?
It's wild. And I left that hospital. The next day, I was on a flight to Ibiza, which was where this family holiday was. It's where I met this girl. I still had the stickers on my chest and all around my body from when they had the, the heart rate monitor. And do you know what I thought to myself? Oh, I can't do coke, but pills, ketamine, fucking alcohol. So I was out that night.
Yeah.
And that's where I met this girl. She wasn't doing any of that stuff, but I was just, and it was just ridiculous. So that was where I was at that point in the relationship.
Yeah.
I started getting really insecure, anxious. I started getting panic attacks, pulling the car over, thinking, shit, something happened to her. And I actually talk about this. It was one of the most kind of degrading moments to this point. And I remember I'd been out with her, diazepam, all that stuff, come home. I woke up in the morning and I was so anxious. I couldn't open my bedroom door. I lied there and I lay there and I lay there and I was like, I can't leave this room. And I ended up taking a piss in a cup next to my bed because I was too scared to open my own bedroom door.
Yeah. And it's sad because when you're boys and you can make jokes about that, but the actual reality that you can't even open a door handle of the room you're in is really sad, isn't it?
I can't. Do you know what? I've had points of getting upset about this, but I just can't even relate to it now.
Yeah. Which is a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. And it was after that, I ended up calling her. I was honest with her. She talked me around, everything was all right. And I basically, close family member had just come back from rehab at this point, looked absolutely mint. And I went and met her and I was like, look, if we want to have some kind of relationship, she thought I was splitting up with her. I was like, no, I need to deal with this. I need to deal with my anxiety issue. Not, I hadn't looked at the fact I was taking loads of drugs and alcohol, all different types that was causing it. I was like, I need to sort my anxiety issue. But
was it because you saw the person who come out of rehab and he was like, oh, actually, you know what? They look good. I want to be like that.
I think maybe it was the timing might have been good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might have been fortunate. But they looked good. I was in a shit state. And I was saying to myself, no, I just need to control my drinking. No, I'm drinking a little bit too much. And I said to her, look, I need to sort this out. And anyway, she stood by me. I went to the rehab. I remember getting there, got smashed on the plane, obviously. Going through the intake list, and they're like, no, I don't have that, don't have alcohol, drugs. No, it's not a problem. Going through the intake list, we're talking about it, and they got halfway through, and I could see them looking at each other, and I'm thinking, oh, what's wrong here? It was,
Can you explain what an intake list for those who don't know?
Yeah, so an intake list is what do you honestly believe that you're consuming within a week? And it was like how many units of alcohol, how many beers. And at this point, I'd started dressing up drinks with dinner. That I would kind of smoke a bit of weed during the day because I couldn't trade while I was, really intoxicated. I'd be like, right, let's go out for dinner. Really, what that was, I'd have a few beers, a couple of gin tonics, bottle of wine, maybe some dessert wine at the end, I'm really prim and proper, doing all of my money just to try and make this alcohol
look fine and normal.
Look okay.
Yeah.
And I'd get home, she's in bed. Okay, as she goes to bed, and I'd smash half a bottle of Disaronno or a whole bottle of Disaronno just to get me off to sleep.
Yeah.
And then I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning working. So that was, and
sounds very relaxing.
Yeah, it was, mad. I just, how I functioned, and actually I functioned okay at that point.
Yeah.
No, I was earning a living out of the trading. I wasn't flying at all. I was keeping my head above water. Yeah, I don't know.
So what brought you into sobriety? Apart from the obvious, what was the turning point where you're like, the rehab didn't work, right?
Yeah, right. Okay, so fast forward. I ended up in rehab, realised that I had a drinking drug problem, sort of, didn't fully admit it. I still left there worried of missing out on the fun. Still had this girl and I had this job. And at that time, I was like, I need some kind of stability. I was like, okay, I was working the Asian market in the morning, finishing at 9:30, driving to Harlow, working for a bit for my mum, coming back at 2:00, working the UK and US market. And my addiction shifted fully at that point from the alcohol and the drugs to money.
Right.
And
which temporarily would be a helpful solution.
Honestly, I count my blessings. The timing of the things, how they worked. So yeah, right. Left rehab. I remember I started taking ketamine in the evenings secretly, being a complete weirdo. She didn't notice somehow. 29th birthday. My birthday. I don't know how old it was. Must have been 23, 24. I can't. Whatever. Around that time, we went camping. I said, actually, I'm just going to have a drink. She was like, yeah, it's fine. Walked into a pub. Right, what can I find is the strongest beer? That was immediate for 7% Aspinall cider. Remember it, clear as day. But like I say, I was on this gravy train with the money. And where I was so addicted to this job, I started doing quite well. And from the point of leaving rehab till the following Christmas, I'd built up quite an amount of money. Mind-boggling, really. I mean, I was a millionaire. And I had this crazy mental drive in my brain. And at that point, the drugs and alcohol started to creep back in again because I was like what you said, you could take your foot off the gas. I was like, I've got this. Throughout that period, I'd set up a little office, brought some other people in to help identify, some patterns, whatever, try and grow that business. And I went in that February the following year after, this big successful year after of trading, I was like, something inside me was just like, something's not right here. I remember feeling so hollow and I was so confused. I was like, I've got a beautiful girlfriend. I've got a house. I had a supercar, job that was just going one way. And I don't think I was suicidal, but I was feeling suicidal.
Not feeling what you think you should have been feeling.
I was just like baffled. I was like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I went to see a therapist. We had a little chat on the first week. And the second week, I turned up 20 minutes late, dried red wine on my lips, sat down, scruffy, stinking of alcohol. And she was like, I think she caught on at that point. Didn't take her long, funny enough. Wouldn't have taken anyone long. And I remember sitting down and I said to her, I was like, I don't know why I feel like this. And then she really started steering me towards, she started getting onto the topic, the rehab, blah, blah, blah. Okay, have you thought about maybe, putting the alcohol and the drugs down? No. I actually think I've got this figured out. It's not my fault. It's the girlfriend's fault. And what did I do? I tried to manipulate her because she said, I wanted to go travel. I was like, go traveling with your friends. I'll pay for it. Get her out of the house for a month or two. I really tried to push her towards that. And then when she was like, no, that's not what I want to do, I've ripped her fucking heart out.
Because you left her?
I left her. I said, this isn't working. You know, I created all the excuses. The reality was, when I met her, I pretended to be that person that she wanted me to be. And then when I started to do my own thing and she wasn't acting how I wanted her to act, you know, I'd stopped doing the dance around her and she wasn't dancing at all in the first place. I was like, she's this, she's that, she's this. Basically told her to fuck off. And I remember that I've never forgotten the look in her face at that point. And I was like, I never actually want to do that to a human being again.
Yeah. But that's the thing. That's the thing. When you have an obsessive mind, when I was in rehab, they called it protecting your supply, whether it's money, work, food, alcohol, drugs, whatever, you protect your supply. So at one point, you just start changing your environment to suit you instead of changing yourself to suit the environments.
Yeah.
You know?
So, yeah. So to get into recovery. So I didn't answer your question. So as you can imagine, as soon as the girlfriend was out of the way, I went fucking mental. Big benders. Occasionally started doing some drugs that I never thought I'd end up doing. And it was about 4 months after this point, a good friend of mine, Stag Do, he was like, right, let's go to Vegas. I was like, I don't want to do it. I was like, because I always made this joke of like, I'm going to come back in a coffin. And even the therapist was like, do you think it's a good idea? He would understand. I was like, no, I've got to do this. And I went to Vegas. I really smashed myself to bits. I mean, we got there on a Wednesday. I think I really went to sleep when we got home Monday night. The last kind of 3 days of it, you know, if you're going to do anything in Vegas, is watch a boxing match. We had tickets to Tyson Fury title fight. Obviously, I didn't make it. I had a few embarrassing moments. And then the end of it, I was lying on a hotel room floor, big bag of cocaine. I'd been drinking liters of spirits at that point. I had to lie on the floor with my feet facing towards the window because I thought, okay, the building's going to fall over and I'm going to roll out the window. I was lying there for hours in a sheer state of panic, putting cocaine inside me any way I could. You know, It was fucking nuts. And I came back. I don't know how. I remember at that point, it was like a penny drops. I was thinking, oh, maybe this isn't fun. It was really, I was so worried about missing out on the fun.
Yeah.
And I got back. I remember being so broken. And there was a guy that I worked with in the first company, and he was sober. I was like, I'm going to message this bloke and see how he did it, because he's still in that environment. He can still do his stuff. What do I do? So I sent him a message on Facebook, and he just said to me, Henry, he said, I've been sober for 14 years, and I was drinking for 14 years before that. He said, this is the best 14 years of my life. I was like, okay. I was like, what do I do? Should I go to rehab? He went, don't go to rehab. Just get through the doors of an AA meeting and call me. And I was just like, what? My way does not work. I've done yoga retreats. I've done juice detoxes, medication, antidepressants, you know, all of this rehabs, all of that stuff, therapists. So, okay, maybe I'll give it a go his way. And I actually remember that I think it was the next morning, I was still totally broken. And I drank, I was like, I can't get through this day. And I drank a bottle, there was a bottle of wine in the fridge. I was like, I need to get to work. Drank half a bottle of wine, took a couple more diazepam. And I collapsed on the kitchen floor, come to 4 hours later, and my dog was in the house, and I went to stroke him, and he just jumped back and was like, who are you? And that was the point where I was like, no, this is it. And my best mate at the time, I just called him. I was like, I can't, you need to make sure I don't drink and drug. And he stayed with me the whole day. He slept in the bed next to me that night. And the next day I went to an AA meeting.
Wow, amazing. When you walked through the door, did you think this is a place for me?
Honestly, the first meeting I went to, it was such a blur. And a wonderful woman called Carol, she grabbed me, sat me down. She just said to me, the girls stick with the girls and the boys stick with the boys. Don't ever forget that. got me 2 custard creams and a cup of tea. You know, and that was like my gospel, you know, like you say, like, I stuck with that. I don't really remember any dialogue from there. It was the second meeting. It was the second meeting I went to, sat in the corner of a church hall, a guy did a share, and I was just like, this is me.
Wow.
I was like, this is me.
So you basically identified with him, and that was it.
That was it. I mean, I just burst into tears. I was like, I'm this macho, successful bloke, big lump, you know, flying at work in floods of tears because I understand what this guy was saying completely. I felt it in my fucking stomach and in my soul. I was like, oh my God, there's someone else like me.
And was that the point you made a decision to live a sober life?
Do you know what? At that point, I realized if I get to one of these meetings every day, I'm going to be okay. That was it. That was the thought that I held in my mind. If I get to one tomorrow, I'll be okay.
Yeah. Literally, like if you hold on to a float thing, you're not going to sink, drown.
Yeah. I was
So
like, it was my life raft. It was my
survival.
life raft. What it held in store for me from there was unexpected.
To be honest, I first went to a 12-step meeting. I walked in and I walked out. I just didn't get it. I was asking, where's the doctors? Where's the sort of medical board? Who's here to help? Like, I didn't get it. I didn't understand that it's a community of people that work together for the same goal. They don't want to be that person who's drinking, taking pills, collapsing on the kitchen floor, getting anxiety, going to work and stuff. They want to live a good life. Like when you said when the person you knew came out of rehab and actually for a moment you probably looked at him and was like, wow, he looks good, you know?
Yeah.
So I know a year in, after that, I read in the papers that you've been using the papers of being, your company had a massive day at work. You got labelled a certain name like the Essex Boys. You came to a really big day after working really hard for that year. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, this isn't about the trade and it isn't about the success, but what I try and portray now and what I've come to understand, you know, I had that generic programming: cars, house, watch, money, clothes, holidays, all of that, bigger, better, more. And even though I was getting sober and I started this kind of process, you know, of trying to fix myself from the inside, I still had that thought, that thing, if I just get here, I'll be all right.
Mm.
And I was constantly moving the goalpost as I got close to it. And what, you know, having, you know, being so successful in such a short period of time meant that I kind of jumped past the goalpost. And for a few months after that, you know, I was like, okay, I'm going to buy more. You know, at one point I had 19 supercars and I had sat in 2 of them.
Yeah.
That have 40 watches, all this stupid shit. And I was just as broken as I was when I walked into that first therapy session. And then I remember having this moment where I got really honest with my sponsor and I was just like, I was still being secretive. I had this people-pleasing thing. I tried to hide everything, but try and fill it. It was this weird, awkward thing. And I just had this moment. I was like, this isn't who I am. Maybe I just had a moment like I did when I was putting up these fences, working in social housing. And I was like, I need to put this all down. And I just went on this, I had this big clear out, I sold everything. I got this old pickup truck and I just went on this kind of like path of discovery. And, you know, the journey the last 3.5, 4 years has got me to a point where I now understand it's amazing to have that stuff. I'm very fortunate. You know, I worked hard. I was fortunate with my timing, opportunity, all of those things. Again, fortunate to be alive.
Mm.
I think that's where a lot of my gratitude comes from now. But I, to my core, know those things don't make me happy. And that was the biggest reward of the labour.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's the thing, that we really are programmed to think, especially in America and probably London too, that these things will make us happy.
Yeah.
So how's your mindset now in recovery compared to what it was? And what's your goals and aspirations now?
I mean, the greatest goal of all is kind of peace of mind. Because for me, that's the most valuable thing.
Mm.
And if someone said to me, right, I can guarantee you peace of mind for the rest of your life, and you'll never wear a watch, sit on a horse, drive a Ferrari again, I wouldn't even bat an eyelid. So that's the ultimate goal. I know it's not a reality. I've got a much better idea of how to achieve it. And, you know, my real aspiration is to try and give back what I've kind of received freely, you know, using the tools that I've kind of been given, or on using some of these kind of experiences as, you know, posters.
Which we're very grateful for, because you're doing some crazy, you're doing 2 runs to raise funds for Stride Foundation. Yeah. One's a 100-mile run.
Yeah.
And one's a 50-mile run. And that's in Antarctic, right?
No, it's only a marathon in Antarctica.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's only it's
only a marathon.
Yeah, so I don't know how. I don't know how, you know, you talk about my mindset and my mental state. Maybe I am mad. I don't know, but I think, you know, physically, I wanted to challenge myself, and it was not necessarily about the runs. I just wanted to draw attention to, I suppose, myself, because, you know, if I'd have had more people to talk to and relate to at a younger age, I could have saved myself a lot of suffering, I believe. I'm grateful that I didn't, because of who I am now and what I am able to do, but I know how fucking painful it was.
When you came in, just before you came in, how much did you weigh? Because I remember seeing you a few years ago. You did not look like you look now.
I was 120 kilos. So it's about 35 kilos heavier than I am now.
That's amazing. So you can come from that smoking, taking all those chemicals and being mentally in a really bad space, to now being completely present, giving back to the community, doing like a 100-mile run, which, coming from that condition.
Yeah, struggling up a flight of stairs.
Yeah, literally, yeah. That's incredible. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's you know, and people say, it's amazing, willpower, all this stuff. It's not. It's what you said when you were talking about when you first went to a meeting, community. Having people in your corner that genuinely want the best for you, that help you just put one foot in front of the other, day by day. And that's, you know, that's what's enabled me to do these things, to bite off small pieces each day. You know, when you're flagging, people come and, you know, they support you.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it just shows that I go from a point where I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, panic attacks, you know, complete mess, problems with my heart, problems with my gut. So now, you know, if someone says to me, let's go and do a 20K run, 30K run. If someone says to me, go and run a marathon, I'd like, okay, give me 5 days to prep.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's really about the mindset and the community, what you said. This has been really lovely, Henry, but I'm going to ask you one more question. For someone who is maybe at home or listening, wherever they are listening, and they're thinking, I might have problems here, or I do have problems, or someone they know have problems, what would you advise them to do?
One thing I'd say and one thing I'd do. The illusion that you're losing something is an illusion. You're going to gain everything. And I would say sometimes you got to take a leap of faith. And if it means walking through a door, which is something you do every day, just do it. Reach out, make a phone call, get to a meeting, sit down, shut your mouth, open your ears. If it doesn't work in that one, go to the next one.
Thank you very much. This podcast is brought to you by Stride Foundation. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please head over to www.stridefoundation.com, where you can find links to resources that may help. You can also make a donation. Please make a donation. It will help us bring to you more episodes. And if you enjoyed This Is Powerful, please rate, review, and follow the podcast to share it with your friends, your family, anyone you can, and head over to social media. I always love to see and hear how you react to the episodes, and it's so helpful for our content to be shared. Thank you also to my beautiful wife, Dr. Federica and Marty, the best producer, Shannon Delwich, to Henry, and to Emma Long, who does all the hard work in the background. And there's a whole catalogue of episodes, wherever you get your podcasts. But did you know you can also watch it on YouTube? Just search for This Is Powerful with Paul Scolfer.
Hi, I'm Pandora Morris, and if you're someone who's ever felt overwhelmed by life's mental challenges, I think you'll really relate to my podcast, Hurt to Healing. I've spent over 20 years struggling with my own mental health, but what I found is that every story, every challenge has something to teach us. On my podcast, I speak with incredible people who open up about their own struggles, whether it's OCD, grief, addiction, or anything else that life throws at us. It's raw, it's honest, and it's all about helping you feel a little less alone. So, if you're looking for real conversations that inspire hope and healing, come and join me. Subscribe now to Hurt to Healing, and let's discover the lessons we can take from every story.